Today is the first day of course number 6. And the main theme of this course is truth. And no way in this course I'm going to tell you the truth. So if it is not about the truth, what is it about then? It's about being truthful towards yourself. And why the heck should we be truthful towards ourselves? What would be the reason to be truthful towards yourself? So this is questions, and you could give answers to that, but it's basically a whole story. So when we move into truth, being truthful towards yourself, you also move into the whole area of honesty. To be honest. And again, I'm talking about being honest towards yourself in the first place, and to be honest towards the world in the second place. The word truth, the word honesty, are words which are really, really, really loaded. You know, you have to be truthful. You have to be honest. And around those words often there is a lot of judgment. Especially when we're young and we grow up and we lie. And often when you look at children, they lie because they're fearful. They're fearful of punishment, of punish. So what is it to be truthful towards yourself? And when you start to become more truthful towards yourself, what do we hit generally? So when we look what it is to be truthful towards yourself, that means is that you are able to look at yourself, to self-reflect, to be conscious, aware, in the first place of what's going on inside. And that's already a big step. Because so often we are not that conscious of what's going on inside ourselves. We're so entangled in the outer world that we kind of, are more directed with our consciousness in what we could do which would be acceptable to others, and that we really kind of also looking inside what is really my truth. But there are moments in our lives that we are absolutely conscious that we are leaving ourselves in order to not move into a conflict. That we lie a little bit. Or sometimes we fantasize. We build a whole story. And we build this story again to be acceptable. Or to show to others that we are someone. We have a story. Also, we use our creativity a lot when we are defending ourselves. And we live in a society where we think, and maybe are taught, that we have to defend ourselves. And this is especially in between the movement between consciousness, which is more connected with the head, and awareness, which is more connected with our feelings, more connected with experiencing things, how you feel about things. So we have a certain feeling, and I take a very, very simple example. You're in love with somebody, and your friend says, how can you be in love with this person? There's something wrong with you. This is an awful person. How is this possible? And then we've got the feeling that we have to defend ourselves. So what we do is that we make up a story why we have feelings like this. If we lie, we say, yes, I'm kind of in love, it's maybe not really in love, but there is something, and already this is a story. Or we kind of construct a whole story to defend why we are in love with this person. You recognize what I'm talking about? And basically, we create a story in order to defend ourselves against rejection. And it's interesting to kind of move a little bit more deeply into this process of storytelling. Because it has quite an influence. And this is often where we lose the connection with ourselves, or we are creating a split in ourselves. So we tell the story why we fall in love with this particular person. And then the story is not bought. It's not a good enough story. And then so often what happens when we tell a story, and the story is not good enough, it's not bought, it doesn't sell, then we think, okay, there's something wrong with our feelings. Because the story is not kind of right, so I should change my feelings. Maybe I should stop being in love with this other person. And then we start to manipulate our feelings through our consciousness. And basically this whole manipulation is based on being acceptable. It has nothing to do with ourselves. And of course being in love is a very strong feeling. But we do this a lot during our lives. We do a lot that we kind of have a certain feeling, and then we adjust the feeling according what is acceptable and what's not acceptable according to ourselves. And in this we lose connection with ourselves. And sometimes in this whole kind of build up of making a story, is it defendable? No, it's not defendable. Kind of, get rid of the feeling then. Kind of, try to kind of create another feeling which is more defendable, which fits more, which seems to be more right. We come into a pattern in which we basically are pleasing the world around ourselves, adjusting, and losing all connection with the depth of ourselves. All the emphasis, all the energy is moving into being acceptable, to adjust. And sometimes this creates a split in a way that we have a public life, where all the energy is going there, and we've got the secret life. A secret life which we are more close, hopefully, to the depth of our feelings, the depth of our emotions, are able to allow them a little bit, look into them. But so often, when this split is there between the public life and the secret life, there is a lot of judgment about the secret life. Something wrong with me. I should feel this, I should think this, but in reality, I'm different. So there is something wrong with me. When you look at these patterns I'm talking about, these patterns basically are fear-based. Yeah.
On being discovered.
Yeah. We're covered in a way we are in patterns of disguising basically what we really feel, and this is fear-based. And on basis of this fear, we build whole kind of stories. And the difficulty with the human mind is, when you look to the depth, the human mind and how we think and how we function as our feelings, our experiences, they're based on memory. They're memory-based. That means if we repeat a story a few times for ourselves, it becomes the truth. So you're in love with a guy and all your friends says you're crazy, and then you say, okay, you know, I was wrong or whatever, and I really hate him. You have to hate him. And if you repeat this a few times, it becomes a reality. This is how marketing is working. You know, if you repeat often enough that cornflakes are really very healthy, and if you eat cornflakes in the morning, you're more happy, we start to believe it. If we hear from several people that eggs are giving high blood pressure, not good, then we believe it. And then if we hear a few years later that eggs are basically good for blood pressure and for cholesterol, you know, we feel betrayed in a way. And these are simple examples, but basically a lot of information we get from the outside world, and we are dependent on this. What is truth and what is not truth. But so often what's happening is that this information from the outside world has a bigger authority as what we think and what we feel ourselves. So we have this outer truth, and we're not absolutely sure what this outer truth is. This is what is said generally, what is believed generally. And we try to adjust ourselves to this outer truth, fear-driven. Because if we don't adjust to the outer truth, we will be rejected. We are not part of. You recognize what I'm talking about? So if we work hard enough and we do our best enough in this to kind of adjust to the outer truth, there must be a reward. So what is the reward we really like? What's the reward which is so important that we kind of move there? That would be maybe the opposite of rejection.
Yeah.
That you belong, that you're accepted, that people see you. And here is where the story really gets crazy. So if we kind of move back in the whole circle we are talking about, which is fear-driven, is we adjust ourselves, we change some feelings inside ourselves, we defend ourselves, we build stories, we start to kind of believe in the stories, we build a whole persona, in a way, in order to be accepted, to be seen, to belong. But are we the story? Are we the one, presenting outwards who really need to be seen and accepted? Is it really fulfilling when somebody believes a story which is not really truthful towards yourself? So even if we are successful that we belong, still there is an inner feeling of not belonging. Because it's not really about me. It's not really about my feelings. So if this whole pattern, these patterns are fear-driven, connected with, the fear of being rejected, being banished. That means that fear takes an incredible big thing and a place in this. That means that basically the biggest truth becomes our fear. Fear is more truthful as authenticity. So the biggest truth is that you're fearful. So of course, if the biggest truth is that you're fearful, that it's impossible to be rejected, that you're not able to contain any rejection, that rejection is the end of the world, that nobody wants you when you are yourself, that you never get a husband if you behave like this.
Sorry.
And if you behave like that, you'll never get rid of him.
If you behave like that, you never get rid of him. All these little beliefs we have, in which our authenticity is not acceptable. then this fear, which this is based on, is something we feed on a daily basis. We identify so strongly with that sometimes we come to a position in which we become the fear. We are the fear. We are anxious all the time. And then we complain because it's not nice to be fearful all the time. To be anxious, to be socially so insecure, so anxious. To feel that you're such a misfit. To feel so helpless, hopeless in a social environment. To be so insecure. It's not acceptable. So we want to get rid of this. But we want to get rid of this because it's not acceptable. It's horrible if people see that you're insecure. It's horrible if people see that you're fearful. Because it's not good to be fearful. It's not acceptable. So we have to hide it. And still we are feeding the fear. The fear is our king, is our God. And becomes more and more our God. You see this happening, it enlarges, it takes over. The other side of this is, say that, the big healer is coming, Ariella. She puts her hand on your solar plexus and she says, heal. And all the fear is gone. So if you replace you in the situation I was talking about, and all the fear is gone, is this possible? Who are you without the fear? Who are you without this basis you kind of have been feeding for years? How can you function? It's pleasant not to feel the fear, but it's also a drive. It's a drive to adjust. So often what we do, after Ariella put her hand on her solar plexus and says, heal and the fear is gone, our mind starts thinking, okay, the fear is gone, I don't feel fear, but in this situation I am fearful, and in that situation I'm fearful. And just imagine that my husband will die now. Oh, yeah! The fear is back. You're not a good healer, Ariella, I'm sorry. The fear is back. So even if we are in a state of anxiety, or there is a lot of anxiety in the background, to relax and to feel safe is almost impossible. We kind of recreate the fear again and again and again. And when you look to your mind activity, you see the cycle of recreation of fear. This is a lot of activity in the mind. What if I have to give a lecture? What if this will happen, or that will happen, or he will say this, or she will say that? Oof. What if this will happen? What if? Worrying This is a kind of worrying. But also worrying about others is part of this. It's feeling fears. And then sometimes we come in worrying to a position where worrying becomes an art, a way of living. And then it becomes magical. If we forget to think about some disaster which could happen and really worry about it, be in a horror about it, it could happen. This is when it becomes magical. We have to think of all the disasters. If we think of all the disasters, then we're in control. If you forget about it, it could happen. It's magical. It's crazy when you think about it. But a lot of people are kind of, moving like this. Worrying becomes an art. It would be horrible when something would happen to somebody and you didn't think about it, that it could happen. It's like you don't care. If you thought about it, you cared, but you were helpless. You couldn't do anything about it, but at least you thought about it. So, what you see is that we're building, based on this fear, a whole reality. Worrying is part of that, anxiety is part of that, insecurity is part of that. And this whole reality becomes our truth. This is how it is. This is what it is. This is the truth. This is how I am built. This is how the world is. This is the truth, the reality. And especially the truth, the reality. It becomes a state. When something becomes the truth or the reality, it becomes a state. It's very difficult to move from a state. You cannot discuss anything or look into anything or see anything from the other side or open up to other possibilities when there is the truth or the reality. We can try to discuss it, to fight it, but when a person says this is the truth, the reality, it's immovable. It's almost violent to move something there. It's already more easy when a person would say this is my truth, my reality. I told this story some years ago in another course in Israel, and there was this very intelligent guy sitting there, and he brought forward then, so maybe it's better to lie. Because then you know it's not absolute, and you get less caught. I said, as long as you are aware or conscious that you're lying, because if we're lying the same lie too often, it becomes a truth, a reality. There's a trap in it. There's also this tendency inside us, if we're not totally truthful and we lie, we have to make it reality. because otherwise we get exposed. So we have the tendency to fulfill the lies we're feeling, or the lies we bring forward. Also, when we lie and we're not totally truthful, and the subject we've been lying about is coming forward in a group or within your family, you get very uncomfortable. You start to dread. You don't know exactly what to do. You recognize what I'm talking about? There is an incredible fear in lies to be exposed. There's a kind of dread around it that seems to be the end of the world. It's very difficult to say, sorry, I lied. Why did you lie? I want to look better. I want to belong. I was insecure. This is very difficult. So I told a whole story about a pattern in which we kind of leave ourselves more and more in trying to adjust. And in adjusting, we're not totally honest about, what we feel inside. And then, because of that, what we feel inside is less acceptable. And becomes less and less and less acceptable. The side effect of this is that we feel more and more lonely in our inner world. It creates a kind of rupture. We feel more and more isolated. There's such a strong belief that the reality is how we present ourselves. This is how it should be. And then still we're failing all the time, not good enough, because we never get a real reward. It's never good enough. And partly because, how we want to belong is to belong from our own authenticity, and not only from the surface. There is a deep need of being seen, accepted. So we isolate ourselves and we feel more isolated. There's a rupture. Even when there is a place where we could belong, it's difficult to really belong. So part of the way inward, part of the way of inner growth, of self-reflection, of self-development, is disentanglement from this outer truth, disentanglement from the fear. You are not your fear. Fear is just an emotion. Is to move inward and to kind of move back to what is there, which is more authentic. And often we start this process after something happens in our lives which is so hard and so disastrous that we are even placed a little bit more outside. We have an experience others don't have. It can be a major loss, which places us in a special position, an accident, a shock, an illness. Something happens which in no way we're able to fit in the social picture we're building. And often this brings forward very strong feelings and emotions. And then we start to take these feelings and emotions more serious. We can basically move inward. This is what I'm feeling. And it's too strong to say, okay, you know, I adjusted to what's socially accepted. We still try that, but that's often too strong. You recognize what I'm talking about? Or we get our first heart attack. And then we become aware that time is maybe limited. And we become conscious, we become aware that we have a pattern of what is really more important of us as feelings, emotions, as thoughts, that we are postponing this till later. This can be in our relationship. Later, when I've got my pension, then we have time to talk. Then we have time to really be together. Then we'll enjoy life together. Now I have to work. And working is standing also for this adjustment. And once you see that your relationship, your children, the feelings you have are really important, they're the basis. It's just one example of so many different possibilities. So you move more back to a deeper authenticity of feelings, of thoughts. And then it becomes really, really, really important to be honest towards yourself and to be truthful towards yourself. When this chance is given to move more inside, is to stand for what you feel, to stand for what you believe in a deeper level. It's not what you are. But it's more truthful to the form which is moving forward from the depth of yourself.
To stand for, to risk the vulnerability, to share, and what is more close to home, more deep, more true, and to allow it to be seen. The more we are awake, the more we open up, the more we are seen, and the more we express. But also the more it can be rejected.
in a way we take a risk there, but to be more truthful towards yourself, and this is what I try to say, because I don't want to say that when you're more truthful towards yourself, you're more truthful to, what you are. And it's not really what you are. It's what is coming forward, this is what I was looking for, in the moment. And it gives you the freedom to be truthful what is coming forward in the moment. It's in the moment like this.
And for this it's really, really, really important that truth, these kind of truths, are always right here, right now. They're never everywhere, forever.
They're not absolute.
So if I'm feeling a dislike of Bart, this is not allowed, not allowed, not allowed. So we move through the fear of not allowed. I really am feeling a dislike of Bart. He's the love of my life and I'm feeling a dislike of him. So this is already screwing my head. I don't know. But, so I could repress it and say, because this dislike is not allowed to exist, then I'll pretend that I like him all the time, because I have to, because he's my partner. If I allow the feeling of dislike, what's needed for me to allow it is to be totally permissive, to allow that it is right now only, and it's just a portion of dislike. It's something passing, it's not absolute. Because I feel a moment of dislike doesn't mean he is disliked by me forever, always was, always will be, and the whole of him and everything about him. It's just a little thing moving through time and space. The crazy thing is that if I don't allow the dislike of him, the liking itself becomes more and more pretentious and shallow. It's not complete, it's not honest. How can I like Bart without also allowing the dislike? Like comes out of dislike, dislike comes out of like. Without each other, there is no liking at all, the whole game is gone. So you lose you throw the baby out with the bath water, in a way, by forbidding certain feelings or thoughts, because we believe that they will catch us forever. So if truth is seen as always relative, always just a perspective, never the end point, then there's a freedom born to be honest. And diplomats use this language. Right here, right now, I'm feeling there's a level of conflict which is hard to negotiate. Is a different way to look at peace negotiations than to say, there will never be a solution here, the conflict is too high forever. This closes all the doors to possibilities for the future. So diplomats even learn to speak this language of relativity. Just right now. Right now I'm tired. Does that mean I'm tired forever? Tiredness defines who I am? Right now there's an experience of tiredness. It's not the end of the world, it will pass. Also that will pass.
So if we look into the to being more truthful towards yourself, and this, as Georgi brought forward, and it really makes truth more relative to the moment, but makes also the form you're taking more relative in the moment. And that's a conflict. That's a conflict with the form I talked about before, the state, which, it's the same. This is how it has to be. It's like a statue, not movable. This is how I am. Not what takes form in me in this moment. What I'm experiencing in this moment, what I'm thinking in this moment. It's the difference in being stagnant and being fluid. It's almost the difference between a statue and an alive being.
Being dynamic.
Being dead.
Being dynamic. she said.
Being dynamic, yes. Being in a movement, in a process. Being alive. So being more truthful towards ourselves brings us, in the end, in the here and now, and makes absolutely clear that truth is relative. And it makes us also conscious and aware that other people have other truths right now, have another understanding right now, are living in a different reality as we are right now.
On one level.
On one level. And that's not a reality like that there are flowers here. There are flowers here, we all perceive them. But it's the reality in how we perceive individually the flowers. And this is different from person to person. What we receive from the flowers and the story we build around them. And again, this is different from person to person. So to be more honest towards yourself also helps you to give form what there is at that moment. And this is slowly building self-confidence to manifest yourself in the world as you are. I'm able to express. I'm able to give form to what really matters at this moment to me. And with this, we basically give ourselves an incredibly big present. We give ourselves back what we took away from ourselves. The right to exist. Existence. We just exist. We are allowed to exist as we are. And in this honesty and being truthful towards yourself is such an important tool. By being yourself, you give yourself the right to exist. And you become aware that the right to exist from the beginning was an illusion. We do exist in whatever form we take. And of course, you know, when you say being truthful towards yourself and to be honest, what I said before, it's loaded, and then comes in another heavy word, responsibility and whatever, and about this we're going to talk tomorrow.